Welcome to our first episode of our IVF Journey podcast. I'm Kate.
And I'm Jodie, and in this episode we'll be talking about how we first met and also how we picked our sperm donor.
So, how did we first meet, Jodie?
We met online on a dating app, an anonymous dating app.
Anonymous. They're all anonymous, aren't they?
Yes. And we chatted for a few weeks. We found out we had the same birthday.
Yeah.
Around that time, and then we met in a bar in Stratford.
Our middle ground.
Middle ground.
Unfortunately.
Yes, and I stole your wallet.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to pay for the drinks, but you ended up paying anyway.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, I found the whole stealing of said wallet very charming.
My attempt at flirtation.
Well, and here we are 5 years later.
Here we are.
Clearly worked.
It clearly did. Yes, we married in 2022. Yeah.
Yeah, well done.
Well done, thank you. And we have been on our fertility journey for nearly 3 years.
Yeah, wow, 3 years. I mean, that's insane, isn't it? And yeah, and I think we decided quite early on that this was definitely something we wanted to do, and we established. Well, I ensured that we established early on that me carrying wasn't something that I wanted to do, and that's just a personal reason. And luckily for me, it was something you definitely wanted to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was no difficulty in that for us, really, because I always wanted to carry and you didn't. So it was really simple.
Yeah.
And early on in our relationship, we did talk about wanting children in a kind of romanticised way.
Yeah.
But things started to get more serious in October 2021.
But before we go into that, I think it'd be really useful for the listeners to know about your process and the process of finding a sperm donor.
Yes, so it started as a flirtatious idea, and I went online and looked at different sperm banks, and the most well-used one is European Sperm Bank. And I looked for donors in the UK, but they didn't give any kind of photos or visual information about the person. And that was really, I guess, important at the time to look at that rather than just a page of generic information. And to get that, you can get that in the UK, but I had to pay, at the time in 2021, £200 to get the photos of the donors.
And that's not all donors, is it? So I think you kind of whittle down your donor and you find the one that you kind of like, and then if you want to see their picture, you pay that £200 at the time. So, and you go down to that decision and you see the photo and you think, oh God, no. And you've already paid that money.
Yeah, potentially. But we didn't pay that money.
No.
Because we ended up going with a donor in Denmark. And we could see the photos. And I realised that I'm talking kind of in a solitary way about finding our donor, because the beginning of the process, it was quite solitary. And what's interesting about... Why are you shaking your head?
Because it was not through my own decision of not being involved.
No, it wasn't. But it set the tone for the beginning of our fertility journey in a way that we'd be quite separated in something that we are going through together, but we'll both have different experiences in. And so I guess that's something that we'll talk about in more detail in another episode. So yeah, I was just flirting with the idea at home, just seeing what was out there, getting a feel for how this works. And European Sperm Bank was the main website I looked at, and looked for a few months, and nothing really was grabbing my attention, and I was getting quite worried that we wouldn't be able to find a donor for us.
Yeah.
But then one day, someone new came on, and I thought, yeah, I'm really drawn to this one. It's got some characteristics that you've got, and you came home from work.
No, well, before that, you actually sent me a WhatsApp picture whilst I was at work, and I managed to take a look at that message, and it was a side-by-side picture of myself as a child and our sperm donor as a child, and you kind of like stitch the two pictures together, and you're like, I think I found the one. And I was just like, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, you kind of, it was the big blue eyes, the cheeky smile.
Yeah. Those two things are very similar in you both.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is ticking a lot of boxes.
And I think for us at the time that was really important because, as we said, we decided earlier on that you'd be the carrier, and I think we're not going to be using my eggs. So having a donor that potentially looks quite similar to me physically.
Yeah, I think, well, we wanted the child to mirror us in some way because it won't be your eggs.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is an important question that I was struggling with at the time. You know, how much does DNA actually matter? It will still be our child. How much does do genetics matter? Like, you know, but it was that picture that exuded something quite similar about you, not necessarily physically, but what did I say? The soul of
the soul of
the picture. Like, really
I guess
captured.
you probably saw that. What captured was the side by side image, wasn't it? And I thought that was a really good idea what you did then, because obviously you can't just see a picture of a child and put it next to me, adult me.
No. So you came home from work.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's that story.
Yes.
I came home from work, and you'd obviously just spent all day thinking about this particular donor, and you were like, oh, I think this is the one, and I can't remember the full like conversation, but to cut a long story short, I was just like, well, you were hovering over the purchase button and I just clicked it, didn't I?
You did.
Impulsive old me.
You went in.
I went right in. Going back on that, but I think at the time I was like, couples, I'm sure they could spend hours just going over and over whether you picked the right donor.
Yeah, I think at some point you just have to go for it, because you're never really going to know if that's the right decision.
Yeah. Picked our donor, and then we got married. 6 months later?
6 months later we got married. And I had it all planned out in my head that we'd get married and then we'd get pregnant on our first attempt, which was extremely naive looking back, but it was something, that I'd wished for, that it would just go so smoothly.
As I'm sure many couples or, person that's just going through that journey on their own probably thinks it's just like that dream state of hoping, dreaming that it works out first time. Like any fertility journey.
Yeah.
That is the dream, isn't it?
Yeah, and sometimes it does.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes it does, and sometimes it takes a bit longer, and it's taken a bit longer for us. But when we do get there, it is going to be the most worthwhile journey.
It will, most definitely. And, we can definitely talk about, I wouldn't say negatives, but the hardship the toll it takes on a couple or a person, which I can't really speak for, but as a couple, it's really difficult, and it takes up a lot of your brain space and a lot of your time, because it's all consuming, isn't it? But there are so many positives with it. We said, like you heard in our trailer, that there are so many funny stories, which probably don't seem funny to anyone else, but there are stories, aren't they? And I mean, we've experienced a lot of fun and joy through this journey together, haven't we?
We have, yeah, and that's something that I didn't expect.
I think that goes to say with any kind of couple or person that's going through fertility journey or just getting pregnant, you always hear about the negatives, very rarely hear about the positives. And that's like coming from like getting pregnant and in labour as well.
Despite the fact that we haven't got to where we want to get in our fertility journey, i.e. a baby, there are still so many joyous experiences that we've had out of being on this journey, and we will be sharing those with you at some point.
It might not be as funny to you guys, but but I mean, and we've got to like 10 minutes into our podcast, and we don't want to say too much because otherwise we won't have any more episodes. I
think we've got plenty of content.
Are you sure?
Yeah, plenty.
But I think what I wanted to say at the end of this, and I mean, we haven't worked out how to end a podcast, but we just what I really wanted to say, we're really appreciative of the comments that we have received so far, and especially to a particular person who sent us a lovely text and told us, you know, some things to improve on, which is, you know,
really
great,
helpful.
Really helpful.
Really appreciate that.
Yeah, and we're gonna set up an email address, which we will, I think, possibly add to the bottom. But if you've got any tips for us or any praises for us, which would be greatly received, and you know, we are putting this content out there, but we don't know how people are receiving it, and we'd really appreciate if it's, you know, if you feel it's really been a real worthwhile listen. And I don't know where I was going now. I know where I was going. If there are any questions, burning questions, or just any questions you've got for us that you want answered, we'll try our best to answer them. Or, you know, what?
I'm just laughing at my sound effect.
I mean, yeah, it was a ridiculous sound effect.
Thanks. All right. Yeah, carry on.
But if you've got any questions, or, you know, burning questions about IVF, fertility journey, any fertility journey. I mean, we are almost 3 years into our journey, which I'm sure we will try our best to answer. But yeah, please send us an email, and it'd be great for us in terms of content of what we want to, just content.
Yes. One thing to add is that we are not fertility experts or clinicians.
No.
This is sharing our personal journey of IVF in the hope that it helps others and it feels less lonely to others going through the same. And for people who aren't going through fertility journey and are interested in what it's like from a first-hand experience of people who are.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to add on to that, we are not podcast experts either. So if this has sounded really awful...
What? Yes, we are.
We apologise for it.
I'm not apologising for anything.
Good. Confidence is key. Exactly. But yeah, really appreciate you guys listening. And this has been Kate and Jodie's IVF journey. Good night.